My parents temporarily kicked me out and now they want me to come back home. I don't even know how or why it became like this. I, 19F, went on a date with my BF, 20 meters, on Valentine's Day where we would go have dinner. Earlier my dad had mentioned how there would be 1 to 4 in of snow so to not stay too late. By the time our dinner was done the snow began to get worse, so we went to his place in the hopes that the snow would go down. It never did, but my dad had texted saying he would come and get me and to send the address. My BF was just gonna drive me back home since I knew that I couldn't sleep over, so we tried to leave and ended up not even making out of the parking lot. The 2 exits were both on big slopes. I had texted my parents saying that we couldn't get out and how I'll spend the night here and come back home at around 7 to 7:30 a.m. since I had to take care of the animals around that time and my BF had to go to work which was nearby and started around that time as well. We went to bed as it was getting late and we didn't want to get to my house later in the morning. But around 12:40 a.m. I get some texts from my parents and my mom starts trying to call me. My dad said something along the lines of, "And I told you to give me his address so I can come and get you." I stated in my earlier text that cars were getting stuck in the snow. In fact, if my BF and I make it out of the parking lot we'd just be stuck in the road right outside since there were cars that weren't moving. So if my dad came to get me it would take a long time and he would have been stuck as well. I started to panic as I had thought my parents would be mad at me and also because I felt like they didn't even bother to read or consider my text at all. I started to cry and hyperventilate. The only thing I could say to my boyfriend was, "I don't want to go home. Don't make me go home." His mom ended up waking up to see what was going on and could see how panicked I was. Meanwhile my mom is spamming my phone with calls. When I'm in this state I can barely talk and I can barely think straight, so if I didn't answer my phone it wouldn't have gone nowhere. I was running in and out of the bathroom to throw up since I was becoming so nauseous. His mom didn't know what to do, so she ended up calling the non-emergency line. Both my BF and his mom didn't want the cops to get involved, but that's what ended up happening. While on the call with them she had mentioned how I was 19, saying that I didn't want to come home, and how my dad was on his way to their place. She never mentioned my name and the cops never asked to speak to me. They wanted my dad's number, so I just slowly gave his mom my phone with his number on it. My dad was now in the parking lot at around 2:40 a.m. and a cop had called his phone saying that I didn't have to come home as I was an adult, so he ended up leaving. He told my mom and she wanted to speak to the cop that talked to him. When she called and asked what happened and how I had mental health issues, the cop had said I had called the police. Again I never spoke to them, and how I sounded fine and just said I didn't want to come home. He even said my full name, which my BF's mom never gave. And after that I was getting spammed with texts and calls from my mom saying stuff like, "How dare you call the cops on your dad? What is happening to you? Do you even know what you're doing? If you wanted to move out so bad you should have just told us instead of lying." I didn't say anything to her since I was still freaking out and eventually went to sleep. The next morning I woke up and finally texted her, saying everything that happened. She told me what the cops said to her and how they had woken up late at night and my dad was looking for me and decided to go and get me because he thought I needed to be saved. And then she talked about how my BF's mom should have called her instead, as if this was happening to him he would have called his mom. The reason why his mom didn't call her was because she had come from an abusive household and after seeing how I was acting she had thought something was going on, which is why she didn't call. I tried to tell my mom that coming to get me at 12:40 a.m. and arriving at 2 a.m. was crazy, which I admit I shouldn't have said, but I still thought it was strange they would even do that when I told them I would still be back home the next morning. She then told me how me calling the cops was crazy and was so adamant about how I did it because the cops said so. My mom said if I went back home my dad was gonna call the cops on me and say how we're trespassing, and if I wanted to move in with my BF I have to tell her what I want packed and to meet up at a nearby gas station. I started to become nauseous and anxious again. I told her how I needed some space to think about all of this. She continued to text me and because I wasn't responding she began to tell me to not be rude. She even began to use the new puppy they have gotten, saying how if I take too long she's not going to remember me. Eventually my mom and my BF's mom talked over the phone and she cleared everything up. She told my mom how she never gave my name out, how I never spoke to the cops, and how I didn't even call them to begin with. She even explained why she didn't call my mom. After that I got no apology from my mom for berating me and not listening to me about the whole cop thing. After that I had texted 2 of my cousins around my age about the whole situation and how if I should text one of our aunts about this situation. They agreed how I should, and one of them said how my parents were only trying to keep me safe, but understands my perspective as well. So I texted her the whole situation, including some other events. One where I had a breakdown and said that I wanted to be shot with a gun and my mom kept telling my dad to get his so she could shoot me. When I begged her no, she said something like, "Well, it's what you wanted, right?" Another time she had mentioned if I said anything going through my mind in therapy I would get sent to a mental asylum where I'd get raped, and if I go to court for it no one would listen to me because I'm crazy and it would just continue to happen. My aunt said that my mom just says extreme things and did it to make me change my mind and how she's trying to keep me safe. Even if I knew she wouldn't shoot me, you should never tell your child any of those things ever. My aunt suggested that I talk to my mom as we both don't fully understand each other. The thing is, I've tried too many times to get her to understand me and uses the same excuse. I had 2 to 3 kids wound your age and went through everything, so can you. When I say that I'm not her, she goes, "I'm not asking you to be me." I feel like she never understands that our mentalities are different from each other, and I know she's trying to keep me from making the same mistakes as her at my age, but I feel like in the end she just puts down my feelings. I was never comforted by my parents, I felt like I always had to do it myself. In the end my aunt said that I could move in at her place. The confusing part is how my mom said I couldn't go back home, but then keeps saying to not overstay my welcome at my BF's. The whole situation has been stressful for me. My mom said my dad has never acknowledged me after the incident and has given up on me. My aunt wants me to talk to my parents to resolve everything since she thinks if we do everything we'll be back to normal and I can go back home again. My choices are either to go home, live with my aunt, or live with my BF and his mom. My BF and his mom and very supportive and say they'll support me with whatever decision I make. His mom has been such a big help as well as she understands how it's like to be in my position. My mom continues to try and guilt me by using the puppy. I feel so horrible. To be honest, I like staying with my BF and being away from family for once. In all honesty, I just want time away from this whole situation to really think. I feel like I didn't have enough time to relax and think on it. I'm so lost right now. Before you say that my BF's mom was lying about the cop call, we know she's not because we could hear her talk to them during the whole thing.